Hey, welcome to the Bender Breakdown. I'm Ryan. Today I wanted to have a little bit of a chat about the declining state of the video game industry, why games suck ass, the monetization practices that got us where we are, why things are heading in this direction, and why I don't think it's really going to be getting any better. So, as a little bit of a prelude, a guilty pleasure of mine is every once in a while I'll watch like a video essay on a certain topic, whether it is about like a video game or maybe some historical bullshit or fucking anything really. Sometimes I just like watching that shit. But I was just always sick and tired of when these people making the videos, like their humor was just completely based on like ego raptor jump cuts and really unfunny jokes and shit like that. And I figured, I'll just try my hand at telling things like they are without trying to appeal to people who are just perpetually trapped in 2013 for some reason. So around 2012, I'd say that's when video games really started to steadily decline in quality and began incorporating a bunch of predatory monetary schemes to increase their profitability. First you had the infamous case of the Oblivion horse armor that Bethesda put out, and that was basically a wake-up call to a lot of these companies and producers that people would pay more money outside of the initial $60 price tag for AAA games to buy stupid trivial in-game bullshit. And then after that, microtransactions started to crop up everywhere. You had season passes for video games, then the loot boxes hit the scene, like gambling shit. There was all that controversy around like CS:GO gambling and whatnot. And today it pretty much is just outright gambling. Like we've moved past that, and now you have shit like gacha inspired games. You got Genshin Impact, like a massive game, which is pretty much centered around spending real life money rolling a slot machine to try to get a high level character or something like that. But on top of all of that, today, the real meta for making a AAA title is just marketed as a live service experience, which when you translate that from like shitty bureaucratic, retard speak, basically means that you're buying an incomplete game at full price with the promise that it will be completed over the course of a few years, like a regular fucking game development should. But instead, they'll just leave a fraction of the dev team to just maintain the in-game store, maybe a couple updates, like some really minor bug fixes, add some new skins to buy, and the rest of the team are going to be pulled away to just design other live service games, which are going to keep the cycle going. And by the time a new game is ready, they'll just quietly drop the support for the old game, and the same suckers who fell for the first one are eagerly going to buy the second. So the question is, how and why does this keep happening? Well, the short answer is, game companies realize that they don't need you anymore. Why would they bother spending additional time and money making a really good game when they could just make a shitty game for a fraction of the effort? And younger players with very little to compare it to will just think, this is what a polished video game looks like. If you were some scumbag involved in the upper management of the video game industry, and the only thing on your mind was just increasing profits like the rest of them, you'd be doing everything possible to ensure that older fans are alienated from your franchise, because they're going to be the largest detractors of, these kind of new monetary business practices. They're the ones that know about, the live service stuff. They're the ones complaining about loot boxes online and on social media, shit like that. This older crowd has been the one complaining about games. So, just, get rid of them. Once the problematic older crowd becomes the minority, all you're left with is just like a fan base of loyalists. And they don't know anything other than live service games. That's the standard. That's completely normal to them. So they're not going to see anything wrong with the directions that games are being taken in. And on top of that, most studios have realized that by making games in this fashion that put monetized customization above all else, they can mitigate the damage done by video game piracy, which continues to outpace anti-piracy measures. So now they get to profit from their game, from people buying, all that bullshit in-game microtransactions. They get to profit over a much longer period instead of suffering that usual drop-off that would follow a traditional game release. Now, anyone who thinks they can stop this practice is just completely retarded. For years now, you've had these bozos on Reddit saying shit like, we gotta boycott these game companies. We gotta have our voices heard. If we boycott them, they'll stop making these shitty games. And of course, it never works. It's like a yearly phenomenon. It never fucking works. There's a reason why. It's because making games in this fashion, it's the standard. It's the most profitable, and these companies are going to do everything in their power to maintain this profitability. And besides, there's no real competition against the model. I mean, Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo all utilize it in varying amounts for their games, and the situation's only getting worse by the year. And of course, for these companies, not every game they put out is a completely horrible live service experience that's just straight up unfinished, but the point is, more and more of these games are being released in this way, or using bits and pieces of, season passes, mixes of loot boxes, in-game monetization, and that's a trend that, in the future, almost all games will feature at least one of those things, or one or more. Now, perhaps one of the biggest boons for the video game industry, and one that a lot of people probably don't think about or really know about, has been the emergence of developing countries to the social media scene. You got all these population-dense countries in Asia, South America, that have been experiencing a rapid growth in internet usage and phone ownership. And basically the past decade has seen a pretty sizable increase in these things. And this, goes for social media membership as well. And today we're finally seeing the effects of this take hold, and the game industry has been eyeing this market for a long time, because obviously this is just tens of millions of new fans who are seeing these games. People are starting to distribute these games in these regions. They're starting to make more money in their countries. They're buying these games online, digital downloads. So basically, to simplify what's happening here is that you got people from the developing world getting into social media. They're learning about the profitability of content creation from big-name internet celebrities, and now an immeasurable number of new Let's Players are pouring onto the scene. They're streaming themselves playing these new games, and they often rack into the millions of views, sometimes tens of millions. And this is because typically their nationalistic preferences on social media boost their fellow content creators through the social media algorithms. So this is effectively providing free advertisement for AAA studios, as they could reach tens of millions of people, which could have cost an arm and a leg in advertising to achieve the same effect. So, in a nutshell, game companies know that you hate their scummy business practices, so they're cutting you out of the equation by making shitty games that ruin the franchise, pretty much for the purpose of alienating people like you. They're replacing, older gamers and their peers with populations of people, younger generations, who have never played a good game in their lives, and they see nothing wrong with in-game gambling and hyper-monetization. That's the whole point, just basically make a new, entire fan base of video game players who are pretty much absent-minded to the reality of how shitty these practices are, because if they see it as normal, why would they complain? This practice isn't going to be ending anytime soon, and it sure as hell won't be solved with boycotts and strong words or whatever, because no matter how much shit a new game may get, it'll almost always remain profitable because of the reasons I've listed earlier. You can have a game like, let's say, Fallout 76 that had an infamous media campaign against it, very critical analysis, a lot of, Bethesda really fucked up their, customer support bullshit in a lot of ways, but to this day, Fallout 76 is still going. It's probably still very profitable. People are spending money on the Atomic Shop, and I bet to some degree it's probably made a lot more money than even some of the mainline games. And that's the problem right there. It's not going to end. And what really sucks is that today you're basically faced with three options if you want to play a video game. It's like, one, you're a sucker who's still buying the latest AAA releases. You're getting sucked into these stupid schemes. You're paying extra money for things that you don't really need, or you're falling behind in like the multiplayer scene because you didn't spend more money on the product that you already spent fucking full retail value on. You didn't buy the stupid pay-to-win bullshit or any of this crap. Two, you're into the indie scene, which in some ways is just as horrible. And not even because of like monetary practices, just because they're so fucking lame. Almost every single indie game has to be some just Reddit garbage, you know what I mean? It's fucking, like every single one, it's either like a pixel art, or it's some kind of like PS1 style demake, like N64 graphics, and they always got to say like, you could pet a doggo in this game. And it's like, shut the fuck up. That's so stupid, The only people you're attracting with that are like the scum of the earth people that, I've personally brought it before, the same type of sick fucks who will say some shit like, oh, I was holding my my dying dad's hand in the hospital while I listened to the Super Mario Brothers theme. This song really saved me in like a dark place. Like, you know, the kind of person that wants to, you know, like snipe likes off of like a comment about like their dying parents. Like that's the kind of person that's gonna be buying your fucking doggo pet, you know, roguelike Earthbound PS1 demake. You know, that's the whole indie scene right there. Horrible. And, you know, outside of that little rant, your third option is to basically be stuck playing like older titles back in the like golden age of video games, you know, the early 2000s or earlier, when game developers were kind of like half and half on wanting to make a game that made the money, but also a game that they poured actual fucking blood and sweat into because they wanted to see a good game released. They wanted to say, like, you know, I made that, I contributed to the game, to the gaming world, I made something fucking good. But that kind of morale can't really exist anymore because of, you know, like shareholders and companies that want to see games made in like the shitty live service fashion. So, you know, never again are you going to see some insane like Halo 3 type hype where, you know, there's people around the world basically just like waiting in line for a whole fucking day, like living in tents just to buy this game. Like that kind of hype isn't going to happen anymore. And granted, you know, there's digital downloads now, so the amount of people that are actually like showing up to a fucking GameStop, whatever, to actually physically buy a game has been lessened. But the point still stands. That kind of hype doesn't exist anymore. Even for games that have, you know, largely been like pretty good, you know, that have kind of been able to coexist outside of that business model, like something like maybe God of War, I guess. Like you're not seeing people like have that kind of hype for these games. Like there's still hype, but it'll never reach that golden age hype. And I think that really says a lot about the direction things are heading. Games are getting shittier. People are caring less. And I mean, if you're like one of the last few people that do care, you're being, you know, kicked out of your favorite franchises. They realized, you know, just fucking get rid of you. You hate that we're making more money off a shitty model. We don't need you. We can get these fucking bozos who don't know any better to buy our games and defend it to the death online because that's just how fucking people act. I guess all I'm really trying to say at this video is just, you know, fuck Redditors, fuck the video game industry, fuck these people that, you know, just care about nothing but profits and just kind of want to, you know, ruin everything you've ever loved growing up, you know, with video game related. They're all just sick bastards, and especially, you know, fuck Redditors again. And yeah, I'd say that's really it. That's my rant. You know, thank you for watching. That's the Bender Breakdown. Hopefully I'll be able to rant about more stupid shit in the future.